Joining us on the show right now, the editor-in-chief of Officer.com, Mr. Frank Borelli. Frank, how you doing tonight?
I am well, Cam. How are you?
I am fantastic. Glad you could come on the program this evening.
It's always a pleasure. Puts a smile on my face.
Well, yeah, I got to tell you, this story actually kind of put a bit of a smile on my face. The International Association of Chiefs of Police holding its annual conference, and this is an organization that gets hundreds of thousands of dollars in funding from the Anti-Gun Joyce Foundation. They've been very involved in the past with Mayors Against Illegal Guns. Scott Knight, who is the police chief in Chaska, Minnesota, kind of did some work with Mayors Against Illegal Guns. At the same time, he was involved with one of the committees of IACP. So they've been involved in the gun control debate for a number of years here. But yesterday, they announced this new initiative. I guess 2 days ago, they announced this new initiative. They say organized by 10 national law enforcement leadership organizations to focus on effective strategies to address gun violence. And, Frank, this was the most politically correct press release I've ever read, because you have 10 organizations, and somebody from each organization had to make some sort of statement. So you had 10 different quotes, none of which actually said much of anything at all. Law enforcement understands and embraces our central role in combating illegal firearms and gun violence. That's from Chief Michael Carroll, president of the IACP. Here's one from Assistant City Manager Patrick Melvin, president of the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives. It's troubling that even with the homicide rate declining, we are seeing a higher percentage of crime committed using firearms. We need to use the amplified voice of this partnership to bring attention back to the basic problem of too many guns in the wrong hands. Frank, new organization, same old message.
But they're being careful about it. I have to take some understand that I was actually down there. I mean, as the editor for Officer.com, this IACP conference is one of our big events every year. We have our Innovation Awards where we recognize industry leaders and new things that they're doing. And I'm there to see all of the different vendors. I'm pleased to see that the message at least is, I don't want to say it's being politically correct, at least that they've learned their lesson. At least that this organization isn't stepping up and saying, well, we have to do something about guns, period. They're saying, guns in the wrong hands are a bad thing. You and I would agree with that. Hey, criminals having guns is a bad thing. That they want to find a way to coordinate new strategies to reduce gun violence is a good thing. I think you and I would agree with that. Less gun violence is a great thing. I think that they're being very careful, and I'm pleased to see that. Now, do I think that there's probably something that's not really being told and there's a message that's being hidden and they're tiptoeing around on eggshells? Oh, yeah, I don't doubt that for a moment, but that's the difference between some of the chiefs of police that are purely politicians and playing that game and the ones who I think have their heart in the right place and are more about peacekeeping than policing a populace, and there's a distinct difference.
No, there is a difference, and you may be right. I know with Mayors Against Illegal Guns, I know that there were mayors, for instance, who joined. They didn't know a lot about the group. They didn't do their due diligence. They got a letter from Mayor Bloomberg saying, hey, will you be a part of this organization? And they thought, wow, the mayor of New York City wants me to be involved with this initiative, and sounds like a great thing, and there's nothing really objectionable in the statement of principles, and so they join, and then all of a sudden their name shows up in a full-page ad on USA Today advocating for more gun control laws, and that's when those mayors say, oh, I didn't realize I was a part of this, and they dropped out.
Right.
Look, maybe some of these agencies that are involved in this don't know about the funding that the Joyce Foundation has provided the IACP for gun control efforts. Maybe they really believe that when an organization is talking about best practices and innovation and coming up with new ideas, that maybe they think that they're serious. But I'm telling you, Frank, I think what's going to come out of this are the same tired recommendations that we're seeing from people like Mayor Bloomberg. There are going to be calls for things like micro-stamping, going to be calls for things like one gun a month laws, going to be calls for safe storage laws and things of that nature.
And Cam, that may well be. And that'll distress me just as it has in the past and will in the future. But being there, and I was standing at a gun manufacturer's booth at the conference and had opportunity to talk to a chief of police from Florida, and his outlook was, if IACP was really against, and don't get me wrong, I'm not being a proponent of the organization, but if IACP was really against guns, would they even have the manufacturers there at their conference? does it boil down to dollars and cents? Do some of these chiefs even pay attention to gun control or care about it? The ones who make it their pet peeves, you have proponents and opponents of it, and they both are equally strong in their voice. I think it's shameful that they take their money from people who are gun control proponents, like the Joyce Foundation, but ultimately every organization needs dollars, and that's where they get some of theirs. Hopefully it doesn't impact the policies that they come out with, but past proven performance would probably show me to be a little naive in that hope.
Well, last year, for instance, they received $250,000 to, quote, continue implementation efforts and around the recommendations contained in the report of the Great Lakes State Summit on Gun Violence. Now, would you care to take a guess, Frank, as to what those recommendations may have been?
Didn't you just quote them a few minutes ago?
Pretty much.
It is sad, Cam. I can't deny that, especially as a pro Second Amendment guy that I am. I hate to see people keep beating the same dead horse into the ground, especially now in light of the fact all the new data is showing that, less gun control means less crime. And the translation is clearly shown. I wonder where that logic disassociation occurs in some organizations. But I can't, especially in the position that I'm in the business that supporting the industry as much as we try to at officer.com,
mm-hmm.
I just can't allow myself to believe that we're fighting that ugly of an uphill battle with an organization like that. I've got to believe that the majority of them have their heart in the right place, but they're the quiet majority, just like so many voters are in the United States today, the silent majority. And hopefully when we need them, they'll open their mouth and be loud and proud.
Well, and, we were talking about this just a few minutes ago with one of the listeners. I really do believe that a lot of times when somebody becomes a chief, look, it's typically a politically appointed position. You do want to try to get along with the person who put you in that job. In a lot of these big cities, that means that the guy who put you or the gal who put you in the job is going to be anti-gun. I don't think that is a reflection of the rank-and-file officers on the street, but I think in a lot of big city departments especially, you do see a disconnect between the positions espoused by the leadership and the positions and beliefs held by the rank-and-file.
We've had this conversation before. I think you're absolutely 100% correct. That's why I like sheriff's departments better than police departments, because sheriffs get voted in, and they have to keep the people happy, not the politicians happy. When you're an appointed chief of police, you have to toe the line of whatever it is the government entity that appointed you and keeps you employed. I've met chiefs who have said, my time in this position is limited because I'm not going to toe the company line per se. And I've met chiefs who have said, I got a wife and family to feed. I'm not going to be pro-gun out loud because my mayor and council isn't, or my county executive or my governor is not. It's an ugly situation sometimes for them. Some of them get my sympathy. The other ones, we'd be better off if they were replaced kind of quick.
Yeah. And by the way, I've been looking as we've been talking at the actual Great Lakes Summit report. This is from the report. Specific recommendations include, quote, requiring that all gun sales take place through federal firearms license holders with mandatory background checks and no private sales. Enacting an effective ban on quote-unquote military-style assault weapons, armor-piercing handgun ammunition, 50 caliber sniper rifles, and other weapons that enable criminals to outgun law enforcement. Repealing the T-Art Amendment, which a lot of law enforcement agencies, including NYC Police Commissioner Ray Kelly, asked for. They say it hinders investigation of illegal gun trafficking. Destroying guns that come into police possession once their law enforcement use has ended. Mandating safe storage of firearms by private citizens, mandating reporting of lost and stolen firearms. It's the same tired. Now, they didn't mention microstamping, but maybe that'll be...
If you read that stuff the right way, Cam, it's all about education, not legislation, and they show off their ignorance of what is deadly and what isn't deadly, and what's justified and not in their gun control attempts.
Now, when you say education, not legislation, what do you mean by that?
Well, when you look at mandating safe storage of firearms in a home, we can try to legislate those details into the ground. And I've said this before: you can legislate legal and illegal. You can't legislate right and wrong. The government shouldn't be able to tell me how I store my gun in my home. However, if there's an education process whereby I learn the risks and proper risk management, and I've been taught how to store that gun safely while maintaining the necessary access for protection of my home, that's education. That's not legislation. Now, why don't we just focus on the one? I really believe this, and I've upset some pro-gun folks with this in the past, but I really think that if you're a citizen who, I think every adult citizen, non-criminal, not mentally deranged, should own a firearm. I think it would be fantastic, but I think that they should have a certain education requirement, the completion of which certifies them to carry that firearm, concealed or otherwise, in their home, in public, ad infinitum. I mean, I just would like to see, here in Maryland, you got to take a 2-hour gun class to even buy a handgun, but then you can take it and you store it in your home, you do what you want with it. They tell you all the restrictions. You don't really have to get qualified with it. You don't have to prove basic marksmanship. You don't have to prove handling. You don't have to understand, use of force laws, nothing. And it just seems to me that our education requirements are so minimal, it's frustrating to me.
Well, see, here's though, Frank, where I am gonna disagree with you, because it's not like we require people to take a course before they check a book out of the library for the first time. You don't go sit in a classroom before you go vote. Our rights are not contingent on the government setting these, educational standards. And when we meet the educational standards that have been set for us by the government, then we can exercise our constitutional right. The fact is, we've got right to carry courses around the country that are backlogged, 3 to 6 months right now. People are signing up for training. Most people who are buying guns right now, they want to get that training. They want to get that classroom experience. But again, it's something that they want to do. It's education, not legislation.
And please, I agree with you 100%. Maybe I misspoke or didn't clearly articulate what I was trying to say. It bothers me that we see this legislation for these requirements of how people handle the guns in their home.
Okay.
What I think we would be better off doing would be devoting some of those government dollars to supporting an educational process whereby we increase the knowledge of firearms, proper handling, proper storage, proper transport, proper use of force, so on and so forth. I did not mean to say that we have to have a government, or I'd be in favor of a government mandate for a minimum training period of blah, blah, blah. Certainly, I train people and I get paid to do that. So if they want to, I'll make plenty of money off that if the government ever gets, and I hate to say this, if they ever even get that enlightened, rather than trying to restrict guns, educate people about guns. But you're absolutely right. We should not have that educational requirement to exercise a right.
But I do agree with you, Frank, and I think, frankly, that's what and it's a pipe dream at this point, but that's what I'd love to see in places like Washington, D.C., places like Chicago, New York City. You've got this complete ignorance of gun ownership. And it's seen as a bad thing. There is no culture of responsible gun ownership. The people who, Chicagoans or New Yorkers or Washingtonians run into who have guns, they're the bad guys in those cities. We do need to foster a culture of responsible gun ownership. And that, again, I think that has to come from education. That can't come by legislation.
And until further notice, when the government's going to help us with that, it starts in everybody's home and with everybody's friends and family, and we keep building that from the grassroots up, which is what the NRA does.
Absolutely. Well, Frank, again, I appreciate you coming on the program, sir, and keep an eye on this organization for us, will you?
I'll do my best, Cam. If you think that they need checking up on, give me a shout.
All right. Frank Borelli, editor-in-chief of Officer.com, joining us here on the program.